to the F word, and today we have with us John Brown, who is from the Cornwall Chamber of Commerce and Build the Fearless. And his F words today, he's got three, founder, failure, and future. Say hi, John.
Hello, thank you very much for having me on.
You're very welcome. I've been excited to speak to you and just
Have you? You sure?
we have good chats, but it's good to kind of share some of that, I think, in this format. So let's start with chamber role. Let's just get that out of the way. Let's talk about that new role
Yeah.
that you've got.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's been a whirlwind. Absolutely exhilarating, exhausting, um, and actually, something which I'm deeply proud and honoured to do. It's I think it's one of the most exciting roles in Cornwall. Representing this electric private sector, and this extraordinary Cornish economy at a time when there is genuinely bags of opportunity, and also it's doing something which I love doing, which is being shouty in places of power to make sure that the Cornish voice gets heard, and that's it's an absolute delight. Loving every moment of it.
Good. I'm glad that you are, because it's been, as you know, sort of my role on the board, being able to work really closely with you on some of those kind of projects and shouty things that we've been doing. But it feels like you've really hit the ground running and getting the voice out there for Cornish businesses.
Thank you, and you know what, it is. It's been amazing to be welcomed as well by some of the Cornish business league, by all of our members and the Cornish business community, and also the board as well. Putting the trust in me to do what we're doing. Genuinely exciting time. Loved meeting a heap of extraordinary people as well. And actually, it goes to show when you start sort of scratching underneath the surface of Cornish economy, just how much talent, innovation, experience we've got here, and what we can do with that.
Exciting place to do business, and
Amazing.
the people we've even been talking through with the podcast, just so many different backgrounds
I know.
and experiences and stories to share.
I do a shout out for Jess Ratty,
Yeah, of course.
because that was extraordinary.
Yeah,
What a
she's great.
podcast, what a person, what a
Yeah,
human being.
she is.
Adore her.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
There we go. Jess Ratty Appreciation Club, accepting
absolutely.
members.
Yeah, except, well, only a few.
So the chamber role started July, I think,
Yeah,
this year.
yeah, July this year.
So a whirlwind kind of first few months. So prior to that, tell me a little bit about John Brown.
Okay, so I studied environmental science and conservation biology, so I've always been quite heavily focused on the world of sustainability and social sustainability in particular. Um, Very briefly had a stint as a journalist, sort of doing the ambulance chasing and the door stopping for a local rag down in Dorset, which was actually really enjoyable and at times a bit grim. But that gave me this sort of passion and love of wanting to use communications, to be communicative and to use words and language to try and convey a story. So, and journalism was paying naffle, and I needed to earn a crust because I didn't have a big paycheck backing me up or a huge family estate or anything along those lines. I needed to start earning some
Unfortunately.
cash. Unfortunately, yeah, yeah, my mum married very poorly, so I needed to start earning a living, and a role came up in the world of PR and comms, which I took, and worked in agency land for my whole career, really, to the point where I was heading up the creative side of a big international agency called Hotwire, um, and flying around the world doing wonderful creative jazz hands thing and advising brands on how they can communicate more effectively. And the time came for me to do that on my own, which I did, and I set up an agency called Don't Cry Wolf, which was, we did everything right and then got it really, really wrong, which is quite an amazing sort of career path to be on. So we were B Corp certified. We're B Corp pending from the moment we launched. We gave 1.5% of our revenues to charity. We put in place a structure and a system that saw people as human beings, not just employees, and developed this incredible order book of extraordinary brands, right from Virgin to Lululemon to all sorts of these organisations who wanted to work with us. award-winning creative work, so we're actually good at what we did. It wasn't just a sort of sustainable
Shiny
business,
package
yes,
without any
without any
substance.
substance
Yeah.
there. Um, and then, and actually, I managed that business. I led that firm from from my spare room to sort of having around about 20 staff and doing well. Right, we were at the top of our game. Um, and we were bold and fearless. And then the budget came along from Liz Truss.
Yes.
Uh,
Memorable budget.
a memorable budget came
For
along,
all
and
the wrong reasons.
yeah, absolutely, for a heap of reasons. And it was already we had already kind of come through COVID, and I started the organisation in 2018, so it was only a year and
Yeah.
a bit until we were into sort of some pretty weird territory. Um, and I just didn't do enough to protect the cash. I should have done that. That was the big learning from that, because ultimately we ran out of runway, and overnight, we had so much client budget pulled from us. Really, really precarious situation, and fundamentally, I had to shut down the business. So been on this incredible growth learning trajectory in my career where worked my way up from literally very little through to being at a pretty decent place in global agencies, starting up on my own, getting it so right, being a bit too kind of arrogant and egotistical about that as well, just showing two fingers at the main sort of industry, and then being incredibly humbled by not having enough resilience in the business to see us through a pretty tricky situation. So that was it. And then, so once DCW finished off, wanted to look at doing two things: keep on consulting, keep my foot in the game around the comms work that I was doing, and helping brands around the world to speak more fearlessly and honestly and openly. It's kind of my mo for how I want to do comms, and then do something in Cornwall. That was my two objectives: be in Cornwall and immersed in Cornwall. So that's when the chamber role came along as well. So set up a little agency, or not even an agency, consultancy called Build the Fearless, which is just the work that I do independently. And then obviously
Part-time
the
role.
part-time role that you sold me, Laura, the 3 days a week, don't worry about it, it's just lunch and breakfast. uh
Hey, that
you,
I never said
you
that.
know it's absolutely fine. You get a given. Shane Solomon will turn up with a shirt that will,
Yeah.
that will make you garish and stand out in a crowd. um you know to actually what it is, which is an incredibly passionate and powerful role. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, the breakfast and the lunches are just the sprinkles on the
it's a little,
top.
it's just exactly, it's a membership organization that happens to have some cool networking,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
great.
But a lot of good stuff behind sort of lobbying and
Absolutely.
representation as well. And that's the thing I love about it and about Cornwall actually in the business community is how everyone's invested in it. And that you do have an opportunity to represent people that can't maybe stand up for themselves on their own.
Yeah.
You can bring them together to do that.
Exactly, and do you know what? It's really important to me that I get to use some of the skills which I've built up over the course of my career to actually help inject some of that fearless
Yeah.
attitude into the way that we can influence and advocate for Cornwall
Yeah.
and for the Cornish economy at multiple different layers of society. And I think one of the other things which is unique to what we do with the chamber as well, and how our members come across. And I've literally just come back from a members lunch just now. The emphasis on wanting to see the societal impact of what they do
Mhm.
realized.
Yeah.
They all relentlessly want to see better housing, better healthcare, better infrastructure. And actually, they're prepared to take on the burden of the budget that's just been announced, albeit scary as hell, right, for
Yeah.
business owners.
Yeah.
But they are prepared to shoulder it so long as they see the floor of Cornwall lift.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
think that's extraordinary. It's
Yeah.
not this sort of, oh, it's just profit, it's just margin, it's just commerciality. Everybody that I meet within the chamber is there to do some extraordinary work, but also to see that this duchy levels itself up, and that there aren't kids in poverty, that there are people thriving rather than surviving. And I think that's tremendously unique to the chamber and to Cornwall.
And through your work that you're doing with the chamber, has that given you insight into some of those gaps that we have socially, economically? Have you been able to kind of get into that a little bit more from being so sort of wide in
Yeah.
our
Yeah,
geographical
I
area?
think it's given me a deep perspective of of some sectors which know very little about, and some sectors which I knew a bit more about, but get a deeper appreciation for it. But actually, there's some brass tacks behind all of this, right? We've had 30 years of inward investment into the duchy, either through European funding or through SPF or something, or something similar along those lines, and we, we still have 30% child poverty, so that's not moved. That's not shifted. We have 20,000 people on a housing waiting list. We have doubled our NHS waiting lists. And infrastructure, while we've seen leaps and bounds improvements in things like broadband infrastructure and connectivity, um, I don't want to be sat here in 10 years' time going, we got all that cash and the A30 is our proudest moment. That it cannot be
Yeah,
that. Like,
absolutely.
so actually, whilst there is a bit of pain coming down the pipe, because I don't think, well, we know we're not going to be getting as much cash as what we've
Yeah.
had traditionally, certainly for the next sort of 12 to 18 months. I think that means that the imperative on businesses, on commercial organisations and business leaders in Cornwall to stand up on their own 2 feet, to actually attract private investment, to showcase how attractive Cornwall is to do work, be a part of that, so that that then translates into the social improvements that we desperately need.
And there's some really exciting stuff going on in the kind of investment, private investment um, sort of arena in Cornwall. I think that over the last 5 years, especially, Cornwall's really stood out as a place where actually it's not just the creative industry or the hospitality industry, that actually there is a really great spread of lots of different industries doing some incredible stuff. Like, I'm blown away when we're meeting clients or members through like chamber or through Wyfield and speaking to them and what they do and the journeys that they've had, and that's all been down here in our like little corner of the world. And I think we've finally got comfortable with shouting about that a little bit. I think
Yeah, I want
it's
to do more shouting.
yeah,
I want to be in a with a megaphone in Whitehall.
not even metaphorically,
No,
like
absolutely,
physically.
physically there. Just sort of draped in a St Piran's flag,
Mm,
just explaining how every emphasis and focus needs to be on Cornwall. And I am, unapologetically, relentlessly focused on Cornwall, not whatever the wider region or regions might be. And I think that's okay.
yeah,
We need to have that relentless focus. But you're absolutely right. In 1,300 square miles, we on our doorstep have everything from looking at how we feed ourselves more innovatively with agri-tech, agriculture, regenerative farming. What sort of opportunities we're going to be able to explore with AI, how we're going to spend more time looking at the Earth from space, what mining looks like for the next 100 years. An industry which we thought was sort of largely disappearing is being rejuvenated with a focus on electrification. um, Retail, hospitality, tourism at the cutting edge, at the leading edge of what that could look like from a sustainable and regenerative future in 1,300 square miles. That is unique from a planetary perspective, not just from a UK perspective.
yeah. And it's not just cutting edge for the businesses down here. We're talking cutting edge internationally.
Globally,
Yeah.
globally. I mean, globally, and I just want. I want. It's called the F word. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear or
Yeah,
not.
you can. You just
Um,
get a little black box with an E in it so people know that you've said something naughty.
oh, good, fantastic. I want to. In a sort of very Bob Geldofish sort of way, give us your fucking money,
Yeah.
because this is like, the, and I mean that from a VC to a PE firm to an angel investor, seed round, what have you. If you are not looking at Cornwall, you're losing out, and the commerciality, and it's not out of a sort of altruistic kind of Dickensian character turning up and saying, "Oh, please, can we have a little bit more, sir?" It's because you're going to get a return on that
Yeah.
investment because of the innovation, the talent, and to be honest with you, the stubbornness of the Cornish people to keep pursuing that and to
Yeah.
keep going at it. And that is an investable proposition.
No, absolutely. And I think that we are a very proud region, nation down
Yeah,
here, and we want to see ourselves win. And I think that it's the more people say, sort of discredit what we can do, the more we push back with, actually, have you seen what we're doing in this sector and what we're doing in that sector? And I think for anyone kind of listening or watching that isn't maybe coming to networking events or isn't sort of out on the scene outside of their own business, they might not be aware of all of these things that are going on kind of on their doorstep. But some of the exciting projects we've got around space at the moment, we've got around sort of energy
yeah.
provisions. So there's so much coming up, and I kind of urge people to educate themselves in exactly what is going on
Yeah, I
in
know,
the duchy.
and do you know what? It's funny with one of the bits of this is around failure, right? I think we've beat ourselves up about obviously what happened with Virgin Orbit and Spaceport. We still have the only launch ready spaceport in the whole of the country, and in Europe, we're the only horizontal launch platform that is ready to go tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like that is launch ready tomorrow. That's incredible. That's an
Hmm.
incredible opportunity. And we need to get over the idea of what failure looks like because failure in space, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So let's get over it, move on, get that greater investment in, get those new partners in, and make sure that that's absolutely flourishing. We have more lithium than you can shake a stick at in the ground here, along with tin and various other critical minerals and metals. And we're moving towards an electrified economy. This is perfect for Cornwall. But alongside this, again, food and drink, how we're going to feed ourselves in the future with nutritious, healthy food from a farming community that needs support without a shadow of a doubt,
Yeah,
but is willing
absolutely.
to innovate. And I think that's another incredible kind of area which we don't spend enough time talking about. And if you haven't turned up to a networking event at the chamber, you fucking need to.
There you go. We'll put a link to the list of the events on the bottom of this podcast so people can find that out. But it's so clear sort of how passionate you are, and that's what I love about working with you and hearing you talk at things is how authentic that is, and that leadership, and actually how, and you talking about the spaceport and how we failed the first time, for example, and so many businesses, it's in the high, more businesses fail than don't fail.
Yeah,
So for every business that sat listening to this podcast that succeeded,
yeah,
there could be 3 or 4 people who haven't got as far. So it's refreshing to hear someone say, do you know what, not everything I've done has been successful first time, but all I've done is learn from that and go again.
absolutely. And we have a really weird relationship with failure in this country.
Um,
Um,
it's
and
not very British, is
it's
it,
yeah no
to admit that you've done something?
stiff upper lip and all this stuff. And by the way, there's you can fail right and fail wrong.
Yes.
Yep, that you can fail right. I like to think that the way that we failed with Don't Cry Wolf, we failed in the right way. We looked after people. We made sure that we did this in a way that was ethically sound, if you like,
Transparent.
and transparent as
Yeah.
well. And from day one, we were transparent with it, with the team, with the media, with the whole industry. We're very, very clear about what was happening and why it was happening as well. So there's a way to fail because that then allows you to grow, allows you to then nurture that failure into something that provides a bit of opportunity. Now, if you're consistently terrified of this idea of failure, what you're going to create is an incredibly risk averse situation. And also, people aren't going to believe you. There is humanity in failure, right? We are all flawed human beings in multiple different ways. And it's about how you embrace that failure and live vulnerably, transparently with it, that you can then nurture a sense of genuine accountability and trust.
Hmm.
And that's what I take into
Yeah.
leadership, which is like I will be so clear around what I can't do as well as what I can do
Yeah.
because I want people to be that vulnerable with me. Because if we understand each other's weaknesses and strengths, if we're able to operate in an environment where there is real radical transparency around that, then we can all be accountable for each other. And that creates essentially an elite team, an elite structure to work in.
Yeah. And a chamber of commerce isn't a chamber of successful businesses. It's a chamber of people that within organizations that are trying to do things with each other, and more widely. So there is also within the people you're working with now in this role going to be people that unfortunately aren't going to see past this budget that we've just had,
Yeah.
or not even want to, that are
Yeah.
just going to feel burned out and say, do you know what, actually, I don't have any more fight left in me. We've seen some, unfortunately, some quite sort of heritage hospitality brands
Yeah.
in the last week alone that have decided it's time to kind of close the doors. So actually, your experiences are able to level with people. You're not talking from a place of sort of looking down from your turret
Yeah.
at people and saying, well, this is what you should do. You're able to kind of get to the level and say, yeah, this is pretty shit, but you'll get through it.
And it's
And
really hard.
yeah,
It's really hard. And actually, sometimes just sort of saying, "Oh, look, I know how that feels.
yeah,
I know how this decision feels.
yeah,
And I know the steps that you have almost certainly gone through in your head over and over again to get to this point." And I don't think it's so easy to just sort of criticize and then ignore those that have failed and just focus on like this handful of what we would consider to be success stories.
like
But
unicorn
yeah,
brands that have
absolutely.
gone. We all love those stories because they give us all something to aspire to and be proud of as well, especially when they've come from here. But they are that they're unicorns. They're
And they raise the ceiling,
yeah,
right? And they absolutely raise the ceiling. They give us that goal. They give us that north star, and we can do it. And that's
hmm
important, really
yeah,
important. But also, what's really important is how you look after those who
yeah,
don't get to that point, and absolutely it'll enable them to feel comfortable, to feel strong again, to feel like that there is opportunity around the corner, so that they level up as well. And what will happen is, whilst we raise that ceiling, I talk about this way too often, but as we raise that ceiling, which we're very good at doing in Cornwall, we need to make sure that that floor lifts as well. And that is about as much about being empathetic, human, nurturing of those that haven't made it as it is about celebrating the ones that have.
absolutely. And looking forward, looking into the future, we've kind of, as you alluded to, had time to let the dust settle on the budget a little bit. And I think people understand now what it means to them, whether they're happy about it or not. They know what it means for them, sort of next year. But what's the funding is a really important piece, isn't it? And what's the plan? What do we need to be doing as a business community to make sure that we are looking after businesses? We can't rely on public funding, can we? Really?
No, I mean, and also, you know, there's there's a light and a dark of being consistently publicly funded.
Hmm.
So if
Yeah.
I just take it from a pure play investment perspective, if you're getting an investor look at an organization and look at a balance sheet, and all that investor sees is fund after fund after fund after fund, what it says to them actually is that you're not commercially viable. So it's not a positive thing, um, necessarily. It's not always a positive thing if it's used as a destination. So if a fund is used as a destination, I think that can be actually a really challenging environment. And that's, to be honest with you, and to be perfectly frank, I think Cornwall at times has slipped into that, where it's seen the fund as the destination, where in actual fact, it is just very much the start of the journey. It should be used to catapult growth and scale, not to be the final destination, so that when that money dries up, you're waiting for the next fund to be announced so that you can write another bid paper and hopefully get some more cash. And that's how I think when we're going to get less money, which we are, the SPF extension for the coming sort of 12-18 months post March, that is going to be at a reduced rate. If it's worked out based on the same formula as it was before, it could be around about 50 million quid, something like that, give or take a bit for
And just to
Cornwall.
put it into context, it was 132,
It was
was it?
132
Yeah.
million, and to put that in context, Dorset got six.
Yeah.
So that we're still getting per capita a fairly decent chunk of
Hmm.
that if it's calculated on that same methodology.
Yeah.
But with less money coming in, we have to be absolutely focused and serious around where that's spent. And one thing that we need to get out of is, and I was speaking to a business leader yesterday, actually, who we were talking about this phrase, which is output harvesting.
Yeah.
Right? That is where I really worry,
Yeah.
because measuring outputs, it's like you saying, right, I'm going to launch a podcast, but the way that I'm going to measure that podcast is about the amount of people that I can get to sit around a table.
Yeah.
That's the output, but what's the outcome that you're
Come.
looking
Yeah.
for?
What do you
What's
want to
the what
achieve?
do you want to achieve?
Yeah.
What's the brand
Or
benefit
the
going to be
difference
for
you
you?
want to make?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
right? And where I'm really concerned, and where we will absolutely be focused in terms of our position as a chamber on this, is that we have to make sure that it is outcome
Yeah,
orientated, not output orientated.
yeah,
And that means you're not just looking at how many people attend a workshop, but out of those business leaders that attend the workshop on, I don't know, becoming investor ready or whatever it might be, how many of them have then gone on to investment? What have they then done? If we've invested into an organization, it's not so that it ticks some boxes around, the amount of people that it's invited to a community launch,
yeah.
and actually looked at how it's embedded itself into that community intrinsically and grows. So be much more deliberate, much more precise about where that money's going. Certainly reduce the amount of bureaucracy that sits around that cash. And then when we're measuring, let's measure the outcomes rather than harvest the outputs.
Yeah. And as a business community, we are positioned and ready to provide that information, that support, and execution of those projects, aren't we? We're ready to go.
I mean, absolutely. And you know what? We have fostered and nurtured a good, strong relationship with either the council
Yeah.
or even with our, new MPs,
Growth Hub
the
and all of
growth
those.
hub,
Yeah.
etc., to make sure that we're there working alongside them, working with them, so that we can use this as a
Yeah.
catapult, not as something where in 12 months' time we're sat there going, "Oh, I'm really, really hoping that some more SPF gets announced because it's reliant upon X many businesses staying in business." It has to be seen as a catapult. We don't not want investment, but we want investment to lead to something else.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's very eloquently put, just with the odd swear word dropped in. So I think that wraps up sort of failure and future and where we're going. If you could just give sort of one final closing thought to businesses listening to this, it's due to go out probably in a few weeks. So at that point, probably be all closing down for Christmas and thinking like that. So maybe something for the new year that people would be thinking about. What's going on in Cornwall? What would you want to say to them?
So I want to say that out of every business leader that I've met around the world, there is something genuinely unique, but a little bit naughty and rebellious, but very resilient that the Cornish business community has. So whatever happens, um, focus in relentlessly on being excellent at what you do. Give yourself a break. Give yourself a little bit of time just to reflect and acknowledge on what you've achieved so far. Work with the chamber to get your voice heard, because I can't do my job unless I'm getting the feedback and the input and the insight from on the ground business leaders. I will go anywhere in Cornwall to meet up with anyone,
Especially if there's a breakfast.
especially if there's a breakfast. Especially if there's a breakfast. I'll meet up with anyone to find out more about their organization and what they need and why they need it. And I'm not going to satisfy everyone's demands, by the way, because that would be absurd for me for 600 different perspectives. But what I can do is at least inform myself and collect and
Yeah.
collate a direction that we
Hmm.
can then all commit to. And that's the thing. Unify your voice, right? The thing that we will make us disparate, and the thing that will be a real challenge for Cornish business, is if they were all fighting each other for the scraps of an SPF table. Unify your voice, be committed to a certain direction, and shout about that through the chamber or through other channels,
Hmm.
but ideally through the chamber. Um, and we will win. We will absolutely win at this.
Oh, well, what a high to end it on. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us today. I know we talk all the time on voice notes and things, but thanks for coming in and speaking to our guest today on the F word.